Hello and welcome back to BookTube with Amy. So today's a really exciting video. I have been wanting to add stats into my videos for quite a wee while, and I actually put a Twitter poll out not too long ago, maybe 3 months ago or something, asking people, right, well, if I was to include stats in my video, what types of stats would you want to see, and you know, how frequently would you like them, type of thing. And I also put it up recently on my community tab as to when people would like stats included, because I do weekly wrap-ups, but sort of depending on what content I've got, I try to do different vlogs and things like that, so it isn't like every single week. I tend to do one Saturday a week where it is another type of video and then 3 wrap-ups. But people says that they would like for my last wrap-up of the month to include my stats for that month, so that's what I'm going to do going forward. But it's taken me a wee while to get here because I tried a couple of different apps, a couple of different websites that track book stats, and I couldn't find anything that would track the specific metrics that I wanted to track for myself. I have a few different reading goals, and so there are specific things that I want to track, and I just couldn't find anything that would do that for me. And so my phenomenal husband, who's a genius, has made me my own reading report, which is great. He has built me my own dashboard, my own reporting suite on Power BI, and so that I can update a wee form every time I read a book. It pings it to him, and then my reading stats get updated, which is just like the ultimate, is it no? He's the best. Like, if you're into reading, get yourself a husband or a wife that can like build you a reporting suite, ken what I'm saying? So I am buzzing about it. We spent like a full day. I gathered all the data on the books that I have read so far. This is going to be no quite half year, it's going to be up until the end of July, just because this video is taking a wee bit longer to get out. So I'm going to put this out before my last wrap up of the month, hopefully, so that you'll see my reading stats to the end of July, and then in my last wrap up of the month you will see my stats for August. So that's how I'm going to work it. There's a couple of things that I want to track, and I'm not going to tell you specifics why just now, because I'm going to share my screen, I'm going to let you guys see the reporting portal, and I'll sort of chat you through what I want to track and why, and then we can see where my stats are sitting. Now, I would class myself as quite a diverse reader. I think that I read for quite a variety of authors and a variety of genres, but there isn't really a way that I keep track of that, to be honest, other than updating my Goodreads. But it's not like I ever flick through my Goodreads as to what I've read this year to see how diverse it is, and so that's something that I really want to hold myself accountable for, and hopefully this is going to help me do it. So let me get into the stats. Right, okay, so first up, I want to track the gender of the authors that I'm reading. And so I always want to be reading more female authors than male authors. And I feel like that's a pretty easy one for me, to be honest, because I read a lot of YA fantasy, which is predominantly a female genre. So it's sort of easy, but it's something that I still want to track. I'm not going to categorise trans authors in some sort of other category. People had says on my Twitter that they would be interested to see how many trans authors that I am reading from, and while I get that that would be an interesting statistic for some people, I just feel very uncomfortable with classing them as some sort of a subcategory. So any trans authors that I read from will be categorised in their preferred gender. Which I think is fair and, you know, the only respectful and decent human thing to do. I will categorise non-binary authors in a non-binary category, however, but you can see from my stats I haven't actually read any non-binary authors this year, which I think is pretty poor. So you can see from my stats, I have read 55 books so far this year that have been written by women, and that makes up 75% of my reading. So exactly 3/4 of my reading this year has been female authors, which I am absolutely fine about. My male author count comes in at 18 books by male authors, and that makes up 25% of my reading. I'm comfortable with where that sits, to be honest. maybe I would like it to be a wee bit more even, and I would definitely like for there to be some non-binary authors in there. I know that I have some non-binary authors on my shelf. I obviously just haven't gravitated towards those books yet this year. So that's something that when I am mood reading, I will be mindful of. And that's the thing, like I am a mood reader, so I am not going to be like, right, well, for the rest of the year, I'm only going to read books by non-binary authors, or the rest of the year, I'm only going to read authors from a certain category. It's not going to be like that at all. But having made this and holding myself a wee bit more accountable, then I know that that'll be in my head when I am coming through to my massive library to pick a book for a shelf. And so it's just something that'll be in the back of my head and, you know, might steer me towards picking a certain book next. And so next, I wanted to track ethnicity. Again, I want to class Scottish separately, just because I want to track the amount of Scottish authors that I am reading and that I am supporting on my channel. I think that it's something that I would say my channel is quite well known for at this point. I do read a lot of Scottish literature, and I do try to hype up Scottish authors on my channel where and when possible, because I feel like Scottish literature just doesn't get enough hype, and it is phenomenal. I think that unfortunately this is a pretty difficult and tough place to grow up sometimes. And while, you know, that's terrible, it breeds for really brilliant books. So I want to class Scottish as a separate group because I would like to basically see how many Scottish authors I am actually reading. And then in the UK, we use the term BAME, and so that is the term that I'm going to be using to be tracking any authors that are Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. So that is the term that we use in the UK. That's the term that I'm going to use for my report. Uh, I would like this split to be a bit more even. This is the one statistic that I am not happy with after I've pulled all this data together. So 85% of the books that I have read this year, totaling at 62 books, are by white authors. I have read 8% by Scottish authors, and that was only coming in at 6 books, which is wild to me. And I'm telling you the now, like that is, I read Shuggie Bain and Douglas Stewart this year, so 2 of them are Douglas Stewart, and I would bank the fact that at least 3 or 4 of them are David Sodergren at this point. So that is a category that I really need to work on, and I've so much brilliant Scottish books on my shelf. So again, that'll be something that'll be in my head when I am in and I'm trying to pick a book. And then next up is BAME, which is my lowest read category, which I find quite shocking. That's coming in at 7%. I have only read 5 books so far this year, so that is not even a book a month by a BAME author, which is pretty poor and something that I will really work on. I have so many brilliant books on my shelf written by BAME authors, and so that's something that I just need to work on a wee bit. I don't think it's helped because I'm focusing so much on I seriously need to finish this challenge this year, and a lot of the series that I am reading are by white authors, and so that has definitely influenced my white statistic. Um, then another statistic I want to track is how many queer versus non-queer books I am reading. I would always like to be reading more queer books than non-queer books. Again, I'm quite happy with where this metric sits at the minute. I didn't have a great deal of work to go on there. So I have read 39 books this year, which comes in at 53% of my reading, which were non-queer, and I've read 34 books, which comes in at 47% of my reading this year that has been queer. So not a great deal that I need to work on there. It is very much nearly 50-50 where I would like it to be. I know that it is difficult for people in the publishing industry who either are queer or who have queer content in their books, especially in specific genres. I know that it's incredibly difficult for authors who feature queer characters in middle grades or children's books to be getting published at the moment, and so that is something that I actively want to support. You know, it's difficult, and I think that it means so much to see yourself represented in literature. So this is something that I really want to focus on. And then next up, I want to track the books that I am reading. So by genre, and then whether it was a series or whether it was a standalone. And so you can see here that overall, 39%, 39%. 39 of the books that I have read this year have been part of a series, which makes up 53% of my reading, which I'm very, very pleased at because I have been working my wee butt off to really make progress with the series that I am reading this year. And then 34 books, which makes up 47% of my reading, have been standalones. While I would like for that to maybe be 3/4 to a quarter, I'm comfortable with where it is at the moment because I did take part in the Accords where I started a couple of series and I didn't read any of my books from that. I seriously need to finish this project. I think that if I was to have done that, it would maybe be a wee bit more an even split. I'm confident I can pull that back for the rest of the year. And then let me just move my face so that you can see here. I've got this split up by genre. And then within each genre, I can also change this. So YA fantasy is my most read genre. That'll shock no one. And so then within that, I've read 13 books, which is 18% of my reading this year. That has been a series. 2 books, which is 3% of my reading, which has been a standalone. And then if we move through to horror, I've read 2 books this year, horror books that are part of a series, which makes up 3% of my reading, and then 7 books, which were a standalone, which makes up 10% of my reading. YA fantasy and horror being my most read genres is not a surprise to me at all. It is pretty expected. They are my most predominant genres. What has shocked me is the fact that graphic novel is next. I would have totally pegged that fantasy would have been third, but it's no. It's graphic novels, which is something that I have made more of an effort to try and get into this year, and I've actually been thoroughly enjoying. And so 7 of those graphic novels, which makes up 10% of my reading, have been series, and only 1, which makes up 1% of my reading, has been a standalone. And then if we move through to paranormal romance, every single paranormal romance that I have read this year has been Charlene Harris for the Out of the Coffin read along, and so 8 of those, all 8 of them, are part of a series, which has made up 11% of my reading this year. And then fantasy coming in next. And so I have read 4 fantasy books this year that have been part of a series, which has made up 5% of my reading. And then 2 standalone books, which makes up 3% of my reading. This is a shock as well. My next biggest category is literary fiction. And so I have read 6 literary fiction books, which is coming in at 8% of my reading overall. Really, really shocked at this. I have made more of a concerted effort to try and read more literary fiction this year. But I mean, I know that's not quite one a month, but it nearly is. And for somebody who was super intimidated, and I can't even say it, super intimidated by literary fiction, I am hugely shocked at that, but also very pleased. And then next, middle grade. So middle grade isn't a genre that I usually read, even though I have had some middle grade on my shelf for a good few years. But this year I took part in middle grade March. And so I read 1 middle grade that was part of a series, which makes up 1% of my reading, and then 4 middle grades that were standalones, which makes up 5% of my reading. And I've actually read middle grades after middle grade March, and I'm taking part in Jess from Lady Lovestead Reads, her middle grade book club as well, which I've been really enjoying. Then next up is picture books. Again, I'm surprised that this category is as high, but I took part in Picture this year, which was a read along that was hosted by Jax over at Spreadbook Joy and Shelley Swearingen, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had so much fun. It was great. So I read 1 picture book that was part of a series, which comes in at 1% of my reading, and 3 standalones, which comes in at 4% of my reading. This is another shock, is that romance is so high on this list. So I haven't read any romance this year that has been a series, but I've read 3 standalone romances, and that has made up 4% of my reading so far this year. Thrillers, again, no genre that I typically pick up, but I have read 3 thrillers this year, and that has came in at 4% of my reading. I don't know why 3 thrillers was so difficult for me to say there, but it was. And then cozy mysteries. Again, this is another genre that I have really tried to make an effort to get into this year. I've read 2 cozy mysteries this year. No shock, they have both been part of a series because it is like damn near impossible to get a cozy mystery that isn't part of a series, and that has made up 3% of my reading. Then crime thriller. I've only read 1 crime thriller this year. One of them was part of a series, which makes up 1% of my reading. Oh, And then historical fiction, I've only read one, and it was a standalone. That also makes up 1% in my reading. One non-fiction standalone, which makes up 1% in my reading, and then one sci-fi standalone, which has also made up 1% in my reading. So not too bad at all. I'm pretty happy with where those statistics sit, to be honest. It is sort of where I would expect or where I would hope for it to be, and that I'm reading more series than I am standalones, considering that I am predominantly a series reader. I am shocked at some of my statistics when it comes to the genre. I mean, what is as high as it is, but I'm enjoying it. And then next up, I am also going to track my ratings. Sorry, let me move myself a wee bit again so that I am in the way. So I want to track based on my metrics that I have specifically says I am tracking, also what my average ratings are. And that is just so that I can see what genres are rating the highest, but then also within my ethnicity, my gender, and my queer split, what I am rating higher and what I am not, just to see where I sit in terms of preference. And so we'll go through the genres first, and then we'll go through my individual ratings. So for graphic novels, my average rating is a 5 star. I mean, I'm shocked at that considering I am a huge graphic novel reader. I'm obviously thoroughly enjoying them this year, which is very cool. My next category is paranormal romance. I have rated every Charlene Harris book in the Suki Stackhouse series a 5 star, so that is no shock to anyone. Picture books are coming in at 4.75. Fantasy is coming in at 4.67. Middle grade 4.6. Horror 4.2. I'm surprised horror's this far down the list because I know I've read some pretty standout horror this year. I would have expected that to be closer to the top. Cozy mysteries coming in at a 4. Crime thriller coming in at a 4. Literary fiction 3.8. Again, which I'm surprised about because I've read some bangers this year. Romance 3.6. YA fantasy 3.6. Why am I rating romance higher than I am rating YA fantasy on average? That is very interesting. Thriller 2.3, historical fiction 2, non-fiction 2, sci-fi 2. Quite a lot to reflect on there for myself. It's interesting that YA fantasy is so far down the list. I wonder if it's just because I read so much YA fantasy that I have such a high bar for it. And so if it's just your average run-of-the-mill tropey fantasy, then I am not enjoying it as much. Or if it's because I've tried to read some other genres that I've maybe just been enjoying the newness in other genres. So that's pretty interesting. So then if we go into my ethnicity ratings then. So Scottish authors, I rate on average 4.5, which is higher than any other rating in the ethnicity category, which to be honest doesn't hugely surprise me because I talk all the time about how refreshing and how important it is to read books that are written in my dialect. And so I probably do tend to rate a wee bit higher in that category because that's something that I really enjoy and something that I think is important to be reflected. Um, then white authors, I rate 4.1. And then for BAME authors, I rate 4. So I'm quite pleased with where that sits. I think that it could be quite a golden statistic if maybe I rated, white authors 5 stars every single time and I was to rate BAME authors like a 1 star or something. So I'm quite happy that all my ethnicity ratings are quite close together. And then with my gender split, so I tend to rate male writers higher than female writers, which is hugely surprising to me. So my male authors on average I'm rating 4.39 and my female authors I'm rating 4.04. No a huge difference, it is no a galling statistic by any means. It's just surprising that I had rated my male authors higher than my female authors, considering I predominantly am reading female authors. Just again, something interesting. And then queer books. So there is quite a difference in this statistic here. Books that are queer, I rate 4.65 on average. Books that are not queer, I rate 3.67. And so you can see there that there's quite a difference in that statistic, which again is interesting. I wonder what it is about the queer books that's making me rate them higher and whether or not the fact that they are queer actually has an impact on my rating. Because I've spoken about this on my channel so many times, but I am a by the gut rater.
I don't take too much into account when I'm rating a book, really. It's not like I'm like, right, well, if an author does this, I'm dropping it a star, or if they touch on this topic, I'm raising it a star. Like, it just goes off pure vibes. So, very interesting. And then in terms of type, so I rate series books 4.41 and standalones 3.79. Again, a very interesting statistic considering I have been reading so many series this year, and it's good to know that I am still rating them pretty highly. So that is my statistics. I will hop off and do a wee outro on camera.
So that has been my reading stats. Hopefully you guys found that as interesting as I have. And then what I'll do is at the end of every wrap up, I will either share my screen like that and do it that way, or I will just like put in graphics of where I'm sitting and talk about each stat individually. And then if you guys would be interested in it, what I'll do is I will do an end of the year stats video as well, where I'll have a full year's worth of statistics to go over with you, and then that can help me set reading goals and aim to keep myself accountable going forward into the next year now that I have this amazing reporting platform set up. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!